Fine, a butler, she said. I don't know, what are you? A house manager, Mickey said. Rebecca laughed, and he grinned. It was a winning quality of Mickey's that he didn't take himself too seriously, or all that seriously, period. For an actor, that had been surprising to her. In those early days, she'd been struck by how mild-mannered and accommodating he was, content to relinquish attention to others. How on earth was he a musical theater actor? Actors, she'd believed, were all a bit narcissistic, or at least self-involved by nature. Not Mickey. He didn't perform modesty, he was genuinely humble. It had taken a month before he'd dropped that he'd been a lead on Broadway, and been nominated for a Tony for it. Wait, you have a Tony nomination? She'd actually stopped in her tracks, as the saying went. She didn't remember how it had come up, but she remembered they'd been walking down the sidewalk. Yep, he'd said. By that point, he knew about every high-profile interview she'd ever produced at Good Morning America before she'd quit to freelance. She'd probably dropped Beyoncé's name 3 times. One encounter with Beyoncé definitely warranted 3 mentions. What else have you been keeping to yourself? She'd asked, and he'd winked. But soon she'd learned that there was more, a kind of more that he didn't fail to disclose because he was humble as much as because he didn't care about it enough to share. Like so many working New York actors, for years Mickey had catered between, and even during, shows to pay his bills. The thing people who weren't in the acting world typically didn't understand, what she hadn't understood until she'd started dating Mickey, was that working actors, successful actors, moved in and out of other work for decades, some their whole lives. The ones who stayed in the business managed to do so because they filled the gaps, those intermittent, sometimes interminable periods between acting jobs with money gigs. Some catered or waited tables or tended bar, some taught. Some became part-time yoga teachers or personal trainers or life coaches. Others gave up, moving to Texas or Ohio to take up real estate. But the lifers kept showing up to auditions. As the audition sides, the 1 to 2 pages of lines they had to memorize to land the role, changed from 20s student to 30s divorcee to 40s bedraggled parent, the gritty ones didn't give up. They weren't so much chasing the dream any longer as stepping in and out of it. Catering shift, audition, catering shift, callback, show for 6 months, catering shift, rinse and repeat. The difference between Mickey and most of his fellow caterer actors was that he was so good at it, so reliable, attentive, and discreet, that by no intention of his own, he'd risen to the top of New York's catering world. By the time Rebecca had met him, he was a go-to guy for Manhattan's billionaire class, which meant she wasn't the only one who'd brushed sleeves with stardom. Oprah likes seltzer with extra lime, he'd told her once, and seen her eyes light up. Tell me someone else's, she'd said. Steven Tyler, he'd said. Let me guess. Diet Pepsi. Tab. No. She'd told everyone she knew. Even as he'd waited on heads of state, poured tea for first children, and helped Barbra Streisand discreetly remove a forgotten sales tag from her blouse, he'd never identified as a caterer. It was money work, a necessary evil, the price of being an artist in one of the most expensive cities on earth. To both of them, his catering was a side gig. Mickey was an actor. Over their early months together, Rebecca learned to talk theater. She said break a leg or merde, French for shit, rather than good luck before his auditions, and she knew not to ask about them afterward. She became comfortable reading lines with him, an activity they spent hours doing because Mickey was dyslexic, and therefore committed to memorizing even when he wasn't obliged to. To read in public had been a nightmare since grade school. She learned to set up the ring light and iPhone stand to film his video auditions.